For those of you who played old school Zelda, Blossom Tales: The Sleeping King by FDG Entertainment will feel very familiar. The chiptunes, top-down view, sword and shield wielding saviour of the world, gadgets used to access new areas, bosses with multiple phases, and gimmicks, secrets to discover, all of it are reminiscent of a classic Legend of Zelda title. It's available now on Steam and the Nintendo Switch for $14.99 USD or your regional equivalent. Rather than tell you how the game is a Zelda clone, I'll go into what makes it stand out from its obvious inspiration. From the get-go, Blossom Tales: The Sleeping King establishes a strong narrative framing device, namely a grandfather telling a bedtime story to his grandchildren. From that point on, you are thrust into the brave new Knight of the Roses story, and what Grandpa says goes. You're reminded of this during key events where he'll provide narration or explain what must be done next, and his grandchildren will react accordingly, just as a spellbound audience should. The game straddles the line between breaking and maintaining a fourth wall, and it's really quite effective. That becomes doubly so when the old man's narrative directly affects what's happening or being said on screen, and depending on your input, you'll find yourself facing different types of enemies. These moments occur a handful of times, but they're a very imaginative way of doing things, and Blossom Tales gets bonus points for doing something different. The kingdom is in trouble when the king is doomed to an eternal slumber by an evil wizard. It's up to the heroine, Lily, to save the day by gathering up the 3 magical ingredients needed to concoct a potion that will awaken the titular sleeping king. To do so, you'll need to visit 3 temples, solve puzzles to get to their hearts, and defeat the hulking bosses that inhabit them. As far as combat and exploration goes, gameplay will be very familiar. The gameplay loop is as follows. Travel through the wilds to the temple, access the temple's innards by activating switches, and face off against a boss. Combat is hack and slash with a few gadgets like bombs and a bow in the mix. For the most part, you'll use a sword, with which you can combo together slashes. Lily is able to execute a roundhouse slash that leads into a leaping slash, and she feels very mobile. You're also able to hotkey your various gadgets to X and B. This includes bombs, a bow, a boomerang, a ground pound AoE type power, and the like. Rather than having an inventory of projectiles, you make use of an energy bar that refills over time when you aren't using it. Some of these gadgets and abilities are optional, as they can be found in hidden chests while exploring, while others are tied to story progression and are awarded for defeating mini-bosses. I found that some of the optional gadgets were utterly useless in the grand scheme of things, as I only needed a handful of them to proceed. They were nice to have from a completion standpoint, but having them sit in my inventory was less than optimal. With that minor gripe comes another, the energy bar, which is expended in order to use said gadgets. It's quick to drain after only 2 uses, meaning during boss fights or fights against a large group, you'll have to run around, avoiding attacks waiting for your bar to refill. While exploring areas, you'll encounter interesting exchanges with some rather dubious individuals, treasure, and the occasional fetch quest or challenge that reward you with a fragment of harder energy, so that you can make Lily a more capable fighter. Find 4 of either and her health or energy bar will increase. The environments are nice to look at, but also rife with adversaries to fight, which will respawn if you leave the map tile and come back to it. You'll also find portal stones, which are used to quick travel between locations once you activate them by stepping on them. The game autosaves very frequently, and even if you meet your demise at the hands of a challenging foe, you'll be resurrected at the last save, so have no fear, brave knight. The challenge level is just right, in my opinion, and there wasn't a moment where I was stuck for too long on puzzles or bosses alike. Final verdict, highly recommended. There's a lot to like here, and even if, like me, you've never been particularly good at the old school Legend of Zelda games, Blossom Tales is very accessible. With its charming narrative centered around a grandfather and his grandchildren, it instills a sense of childlike wonder, while also immersing you in a tale of bravery and whimsy. This bite-sized adventure has a lot of heart and is well worth a playthrough. The Switch is the perfect console for titles like this, and I hope to see the next chapter of Lily's adventures soon. I've been Dawn from NeedtoKnow Gamers. Stay in the know.